Welcome back to the ongoing saga of the Sacred Chain. In the last chapter, Alejandro resisted the temptation to sleep with the beautiful, sexually magnetic Esperanza, and he prevailed. He realized that she never wanted him and was only using her sexuality to pressure him into using his influence with the ambitious, wicked Don Padilla. She was doing it all to save her aging husband's honor so that he would not go to his grave in disgrace. Let's see what happens next. Chapter 5, Fencing Match. The courtyard of Don Padilla's mansion is traditional and most exquisite. It is flagged with natural stone, moss-covered. The wings jut out from the main house, forming 3 sides to nestle the picturesque square. The manor is bricked, roofed with Spanish tile, and has flowers dotting its garden plots, artfully strewn through a maze of walkways. The patio area is a private place, the heart of the house, where most of the activity happens in the hot Leon summers. Colonnades run along the wings, shady havens from the blistering sun. They are filled with a variety of shapes and sizes of men. Some of the figures are nobles, but most of them are natives, happy to be employed by such a powerful man. They are browned, dusty, smelling of sweat and whiskey. Some are mustachioed. All partake of the character of their master. Thus they are mocking and disdainful of any beneath them. In the center of the square, 2 striking figures dance and parry exquisitely. One is a noble, with a richly embroidered waistcoat, tailored pantaloons, imported Italian boots, and a gold chain at his neck. He sports a fat emerald on his forefinger, and smaller gold rings set with various stones. The man is Don Padilla. Young, barely mid-30s, unmarried, overwhelmingly ambitious, arrogant, powerful, rich even for a Don, handsome, and a more than capable swordsman. The other figure is Alejandro. "You have been practicing with someone else, Senor Padilla." Alejandro breathes, genuinely impressed. "I should have known I could not fool the master." Padilla is humored. Every comment of his has a double entendre. Even his affirmations are subtle attempts to humiliate. He knows the limitations of his adversaries, and he sees everyone as an adversary. He waits until Alejandro says more, in order to toy with him. Alejandro, in candid surprise, comments on Padilla's technique in swordplay. "I have not seen Posta di Falcon so high, but it is effective." Padilla smiles. "That's because it is not Posta di Falcone. The Italian masters call it Guardia Alta." He watches to gaze Alejandro's response. Alejandro muses. "I am honored to learn a new technique." "Something other than Master Diego de Valera? How can you stomach it as a Spaniard?" Padilla's lineage descends from various of the great families of Europe, particularly of those still in favor among the Habsburgs. Thus he considers himself a superior to even those Dons whose families are great in the old country of España. "I am not a Spaniard, Don Padilla." Alejandro's response is terse and tight-lipped. "But you wish you were. Then you could have married Esperanza." Padilla laughs, and the other nobles and his henchmen surrounding the courtyard snicker. Alejandro's secret dreams are well known. He is humiliated. He stops fighting. "I do not choose to instruct where I am being mocked." Alejandro curtly bows and attempts to walk away, but Padilla is not through with him, and nobody walks away from him, least of all a hireling of indigenous peasant stock. "You will instruct where you are being paid." Padilla attacks. Alejandro is forced to engage him and continue fighting. These are Mexicans. This is not so uncommon. Any of us who have grown up around old-fashioned Latino men are used to loud arguments and the occasional chest-butting until the women folk fuss and scold them. I recall extended family gatherings as a child when our fathers and uncles, many of whom were, coincidentally, raised in Leon, Guanajuato, would stand toe-to-toe, spittle flying, rattling off Spanish invectives. We were children raised in the U.S., didn't know much Spanish, and even if we had, would have never understood the politics or religion or whatever it was they were arguing about. There would be wild gesticulations, fingers jabbed in chests, then slapped away, and finally the ultimate settler of disputes, the Mexican leg wrestle. As if on some genetically prescribed cue, both ideological combatants would drop to the floor, faces to the ceiling, hip to hip, with their heads down by the other's feet. They would raise their inside legs, uno, dos, tres. Then they would hook them together in the crook opposite their knees and attempt to flip the other in a forced backward somersault. The kids would start clapping and hollering for their father or favorite uncle. The women would be mock crying and pleading for the men to stop, for the children's sakes. Suddenly one of them would be flipped feet overhead, often stopping only when smashing into the wall, sometimes breaking a lamp or table. No problem really, just good, clean Mexican fun. It only got serious when grandmother came into the room. Ay, ay, ay. One sharp word from her and both man-boys would stand up straight, hug each other fiercely, and hope she wouldn't make them lose face by beating them both around their heads in front of their wives and children. There is no one a Mexican hombre fears more than Mama. After she left the room to continue kitchen preparations, the loser would mumble a few complaints about foul play or that he had called time out just before getting flipped. A minor argument would revive with hurried glances at the kitchen door in trepidation that Abuela might hear. But the minor squabble would end as soon as the call was issued for dinner. The two men would laugh and kiss each other's bearded faces, admit that it was a tie, and walk into the dining room arm in arm. The final repercussion might be that grandmother would sometimes end up serving them last, even after the women, in order to chasten them. The children would giggle and snicker at the stylized chastisement. The two former combatants would giggle along with the rest, and the children would wonder that their feared paternal disciplinarian could actually be cowed. Ah, childhood. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Alejandro parries Don Padilla's attacks with competence. After a few moments, their tempers subside and both return to enjoy the swordplay. They are both excellently breathed and can have a cavalier tete-a-tete while tossing the steel around admirably. Don Padilla. Si, Master Alejandro. All the Don's old-world refinement hurries back to the fore now that his excess adrenaline is being sloughed off in physical exertion. May I offer some advice? Alejandro's voice shows due deference and politeness of tone. Certainly, my friend. That is the reason you are here. The fighting does not abate in physical intensity, but something has shifted. The audience of nobles and servitors gathered round begins to breathe, more easily. This is not about swordplay. Alejandro nods his head obsequiously, but ill-timed requests are generally doomed before they get started. Speak, the noble sputters, while shuffling backwards and deflecting an excellent attack by Alejandro. I cannot aspire to the beautiful Senora Esperanza Gutierrez. I know this. Alejandro acquiesces. A mocking grimace appears on Don Padilla's face as he hears Alejandro admit his inferiority. But the peasant swordsman is not finished. But you can. What are you talking about, you fool? She is married. Alejandro takes a deep breath. Don Padilla, fueled with fresh adrenaline, redoubles his strokes. The battle becomes more complicated, more difficult to converse and still effectively turn aside the cold Damascus steel. Senor Gutierrez is old and feeble. He will not live for 5 years more. Their swords lower as if on cue, as the peasant swordsman continues. She will marry you, Don Padilla, if there are certain conditions. The Don bristles. What an outrage. Conditions? He spits. He has never allowed anyone but himself to set conditions in any form of transaction. How dare this fool and would-be paramour to a noble Spanish lady, and in front of his men, set conditions? Have you spoken with her? Alejandro nods. The point of his sword rests upon the flagstones. Padilla smiles and suddenly faints. Alejandro's steel springs up involuntarily. Padilla nods, impressed at his attentiveness. He does not want to discontinue the lesson, and the clash of steel makes it more difficult for the men in the sheltered colonnades, straining their ears for every turn of phrase to make out what is transpiring. See, she does not want her husband to go to his grave in tears, Alejandro manages. Don Padilla bristles inside. So, what did he care about a fat Don with no liquid assets and one who stole his feminine prize? But Alejandro continues. Let him earn back his losses. Drop the ridiculous charges against him. More advice? Did this fool just call him ridiculous? She will marry you, Don Padilla. You will inherit his land anyway. You just have to wait a little while. Padilla hasn't gotten to where he is by artlessness or square dealing. His personality is one of bravado and posturing, bullying and humiliating, but above all, it is suspicious. He takes it as a matter of course that this handsome swordsman before him is the lover of the noble Esperanza. It infuriates him that the hands of an indecorous Indian have fawned over the milky flesh of his desired woman. And what if this is all a trick by a low-born fool who wants to marry her himself and keep the wealth in his hands? He believes this to be the answer already, but he frames it with some semblance of courtesy or at least respect, for Alejandro is wielding a sword. Righteously offended, Alejandro retorts, "I am a gentleman, a man of honor. I would never deceive you in such a manner." Vitriol spurts out in poisonous torrents from the arrogant Padilla. Both caution and restraint are overmastered by his pride of bloodline. "You are a half-breed cholo, and you are all liars and peasants. You dress like a gentleman because of the foolishness of Señor Gonzalez, but you will always be a chichimeca." The dam bursts. Alejandro is incensed. He is proud of his mother's people, but the derogatory term cholo is inappropriate to the point that, dawn or no, he must chasten Padilla, should it mean imprisonment or even death. His untimely beginning is careening toward a tragic ending. Alejandro's adrenaline and testosterone have caused him to thoroughly forget Esperanza and her husband Don Gutierrez. Terrible plight. Straight away, the swordplay turns truly deadly. The hands of Padilla's men move to their knives and pistoles. They will not preemptively dishonor the Don by rushing in to end the squabble, but the moment he calls to them, they will be ready. The boots of the two swordsmen kick up the dust. Heavily winded as they are, they show little sign of it. The battle lust is upon them. Alejandro hears himself suddenly shouting, "The Spanish rule will be overturned in the revolution in Guanajuato." In this statement alone, he is probably already a man condemned to hang. Don Padilla's practiced response reflects his inner convictions as a colonizer, well connected with the old world. "Let me tell you what will happen, Alejandro. Mexico will always be ruled by Europeans, the Spanish, perhaps even the Habsburgs." The powerful name carries no meaning to either Alejandro or the peasant thug standing round. "We will utterly squash your petty revolution, and as for Esperanza, her husband will die the sooner if I bring him to grief, and I will take her and make her mine with or without her consent before his bones are settled in the ground." Just words, perhaps, but with his power growing out of proportion in the region, such impropriety may just be possible with a criminal like Padilla. Alejandro steps back and lowers his sword. In the light of these words, his first flush of wrath has transformed back into a sense of civility. These statements require answering in the fullest of measure. He realizes the futility of pressing Esperanza's request further upon Padilla. The thing was probably doomed from the start, and he was quite possibly the candidate least likely suited to such a task. But at present the honor of the Gutierrez family and a noble lady is being dragged through the dirt. Alejandro wonders that the other Dons haven't spoken in outrage. He is not aware of the complicated hierarchy that exists between them, and that they look up to Padilla's superior birth from a depth not as far removed from his as he supposes. It is as one of the pre-moderns who look upon the angels, or postmoderns who look upon the celestial spirits, or teens today look up to those hot celebrities. There are quite possibly nearly infinite levels of beauty and power amongst the spiritual beings as there are among religious expressions and pure ideologies wafting down revelations from the world of meaning, but they all appear so far beyond us that we often sadly mistake and assume all of equal dignity. Alejandro speaks one last time to Don Padilla that day. He steps back, sheaths his sword, and his voice hoarsely barks, "I challenge you on behalf of Señor y Señora Gonzalez to fight to the death for their honor." The dust settles, and time seems to suddenly stop. Slow-motion glances surge between the observers. Will Don Padilla accept this challenge? The rules of etiquette are being stretched to the breaking point. Alejandro looks and acts so like aristocracy that he is treated a great deal more like a nobleman than any other of his class. But he is decidedly not one. His unique position is evident by the fact that Padilla hasn't sauntered away and had him bullwhipped at his first attempt at conversation as equals. and now he has thrown down the gauntlet in a comportment that demands he be treated with equal footing with a peer of the realm. Alejandro's stance is both grim and proud, fully expecting the challenge to be duly accepted with the stylized courtesy with which it was delivered. Padilla pauses to take a mental survey of the situation. His men look on at the circus. The nobles glance away, embarrassed both for him and for Alejandro, who is rather a favorite among them. There's no possibility Padilla is going to come out of this situation if he meets the vain poppycock even remotely as an equal. He cannot help but admire his pluck, as well as his considerable skill in the gentlemanly arts, but Alejandro is a trained guerrilla as far as Padilla is concerned. Birth and land supersede all else to one whose very rationale for existence depends upon it. And that's the end of Chapter 5. Alejandro has thrown down the gauntlet. Padilla has a decision to make. Tune in next time for the exciting conclusion to this encounter.